Hello, Kathryn.
Hello.
How are you?
I am doing wonderfully. How are you?
Good. I'm so really over excitedly the moon to record you and talk to you today because you're one of my besties. We've known each other over 10 years and I have been wanting to do this podcast for a while. So thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, so we're going to dive a little bit into your story. But before we do that, I want to actually put a plug in for our new group program that you and I are doing together.
Indeed.
Super excited about that. Yeah. And we'll get more into the details later, but just really quickly, it's going to be a 6 week program, and I'm have it on my heart to want to just really dive into some business principles, actually. I know I have a few people right now that I'm talking with that seems to be a really big theme this year in the new year. It's like, how can I bring more money into my business? How can I get it started even? How can I potentially move out of my career into a more fulfilling career? So I want to make that a part of our group. I also would love to do some hot seat coaching, do some shadow work. And I know that you have some really great pieces that you are going to be offering as well. So, again, we'll get into that later. But yeah, let's just start a little bit. I want to tell our audience today, the Fulfilled Feminine podcast, that yeah, I've really been able to watch you over the years just grow and change and evolve. And our backstory, we actually were roommates together. Yeah, over 10 years ago. And we were finishing up, I was finishing up, and you were as well, social work
Mhm.
and in our undergrad. And then we also attended, when we were both attending church, we attended the same church. And we also led a group together back then as well. And yeah, so I guess my first question would be, how did you go about, because I know now you have, knowing your story, you've kind of stepped out of Christianity and into, you're still into spirituality, but you've also really dove into some really deep places with that. I would love to hear and tell our audience about that story a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say, I've always kind of described myself as a mystic, more on like the mystical side of life and spirituality. Um, and Christianity was like the container that I was brought up in. So that was kind of like my worldview, my frame of reference for a time, until I felt as if I had pressed on the boundaries of that space. It's like until I kind of filled up that space and it started to feel more constricting than it did expansive for me. Because I think there was a time, especially when I was young, where exploring in that realm did have a expansive feeling to it. Um, and because like we were roommates and living together and kind of like diving into a lot of these more mystical experiences within our own spirituality and within our own connection to the divine. And so it really served a purpose for me for a while. But at some point, it's like those edges started to feel very limiting because where I wanted to go and where I was being called to kind of push was out beyond that space. So I did go through quite a breaking free from religion, from institutionalized anything when it comes to spirituality. And really, it was just like this deep inner call to tune into like what this is, this connection, and find out for myself, like, what does this mean for me? Who am I in a larger context? Um, and yeah, how can I kind of like break the barriers of like what I've been told and kind of challenge things? um, I would say that like I was born into the world extremely curious. And when you kind of have this disposition of curiosity and like, ooh, what's behind that door and what's over there, anything that seeks to kind of temper that and control that, you end up having to like push against it. And at some point for me, like that's kind of what I had to do on my own inner journey, is like blow up the boxes that I was already in, and kind of the beliefs that I already had, just to feel like, all right, if I drop a bomb here and let this explode, what else is out there? And so it was a deep, deep dive for me into this like internal discovery, not only of just like who I am, but my understanding of the divine and my understanding of humanity and this whole thing that we're a part of. So, yeah, I would say like my experience of life has been very much like giving birth over and over again. It's like facing those contractions that start to like press in on you and feel really, really small and tight. I've been through a lot of scenarios in which I have felt completely disempowered and oppressed. So having to experience contraction in that way, and having to experience shadow and darkness, and then the expansion that comes after that, and the liberation and the freedom that comes after that, and the giving birth of this new version of myself, or um, whatever. So yeah, that
That's
kind of like encapsulates it.
that's amazing. I love that. I love the pieces you were saying, how Christianity felt constricting to you and you're really ready to branch out and just kind of, yeah, find out like what spirituality meant for yourself, and the divine meant for yourself. And that's something that I always admired about you. I remember when I was in grad school and I was studying all these different spiritualities or psychologies and things like that. And I remember I would talk to you and you were such a great like self starter, self studier. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm reading this book. And you're like, oh, I'm actually reading that book too. And I was like, that's so cool that you were able to just, yeah, branch out and take that leap by yourself. And because I remember you were studying like yoga and you were studying like how like shamanism and these different things, which in Christianity where I was from, like that's a no-no. It's like
Mm.
you're off from like that narrow path. And I always like really admired that about you. And so I'm curious, after that, how did you make it from North Carolina to now living in Colorado, to where you've had some really great experiences there as well in Colorado?
Yeah, so I think that's that's another kind of part of the journey for me, with expansion and branching out and kind of breaking away from everything that like I once considered home and normal. And I would say like my life has existed far outside of the spectrum of normal. So I think that's why I kind of have different perspectives that often like people don't have, like when it comes to, staying safe and staying on this narrow path, and don't let anything in. I'm kind of saying, actually, open those doors, open those portals, go into those dimensions, let that stuff in. Because like those are the spaces where you learn. Like we learn so much on this like path of experience. And I think, people, you can give me all the books in the world and I can read them, but until I've actually faced off with this certain experience or a certain energy, a certain dynamic, like it's meaningless for me. It's like my life is this continual experience, and learning through that, through really getting my hands dirty and not being afraid to actually like step into spaces that feel very unfamiliar. So my journey to get here in Colorado, so I was born in North Carolina, stayed there most of my life, got married there, and then my husband at the time and we just kind of, we were ready to like be expanded in not just like the emotional interpersonal things that we were doing, but like also just location and spaciousness. Like I think there was this deep need for spaciousness, which Colorado really has to offer. I love living here for that reason. It's super spacious, just like physically, but also emotionally, spiritually. It's just it's got a really nice energy to it. So my then husband and we traveled a lot and then ended up in Colorado after our travels. And so like we backpacked through South America, we went to Eastern Europe for a time, had a lot of just interesting experiences with life outside of the norm and outside of like how we grew up. So that kind of added to the desire to like physically move locations to something that was totally different. And then when we got here in Colorado, that's when kind of my journey with different like plant medicines came along, different healing modalities, and a lot of like new expansive like beliefs and perceptions and exploring the world through a different lens.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love the fact that you traveled so much. I always admired that about you. And since you brought it up, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about your journey with ayahuasca. I know that's something that is really big right now in a lot of different places, in the States, in the world. I haven't had a chance to do it yet myself, but I would love to hear you talk about your experience, if you would like to share your experiences with ayahuasca, because I remember you would have them and come back and talk to me, and have such profound breakthroughs. And I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah. So plant medicines, especially things like ayahuasca, they're very, very intense experiences where it kind of you really meet yourself in very, very deep, profound ways that you don't, when you're just moving through your life. It's kind of like a very, some people describe it as like 10 years of therapy in one night. And I feel like that's like a really good description when you don't actually fight the experience. Um, it depends on your relationship with intensity. So I would say like I have a very, at this point in my life, a very good relationship with intense experience and intense emotions, to where I've allowed life to stretch me and go to those edges and break me open with intense experiences. But I would say, like, you know, when people do not have a good relationship with their own intensity, with their own feelings, they go into a plant medicine experience. It is extremely, it can feel extremely crushing, because they're not exactly ready to expand in that way. For me, I think when I found ayahuasca, I was kind of in this place where I was ready to like look at some of my worst fears in the face for the purpose of expanding, breaking through, and overcoming these limitations that have been holding myself back, like my whole life, for years and years and years. These certain limitations or certain beliefs that have kept me so small, and having the recognition of like, all right, no one is gonna take this away from me. Like, this is my journey, this is my experience, and like these energies and these feelings that I have, whether they come from trauma or just limiting beliefs or whatever, like these are mine. This is my curriculum. It is my job to confront and absorb and move forward in life. And so I think when I discovered plant medicine and ayahuasca, I was really at that point of like, I'm okay with allowing myself to fall apart and to be shattered for the purpose of rebuilding in a new, expansive way. Because I think, a lot of times, like, we get, women especially, like when we're deep feelers and we have intense emotions, and we might be struggling with something like anxiety comes into our life, or a certain situation comes in where it feels like this is going to crush me, this, like, I can't possibly feel this or contain this. I think plant medicines are one of the most useful tools when it comes to expanding our ability to be with uncomfortable feelings, being with an uncomfortable sensation. Not that it's going to take away fear out of our lives, but it expands our capacity to sit with it, to confront it, to be with it. And then once we expand into that new space, like, we become unstoppable through life. If we can confront, absorb, done. So my journey with plant medicines, with ayahuasca, have really put my limits to the test, So
Mm.
like I will find myself in a situation psychologically where I'm in this deep psychological process, whether it's with my trauma, whether it's with something that I'm dealing with at the time, where it brings me to that absolute edge where you surrender. And then in that surrender, you let go of the fight. And when you let go of the fight, the battle is over. Like there
Mhm.
is no battle. It's like letting go of the need to resist our own experiences, letting go of the need to resist what life is trying to teach us.
Mm.
And I feel like that is where I have reclaimed so much of my power as a woman, um, in those spaces where I'm sitting with darkness, where I'm sitting with fear, and allowing it to stretch me absolutely. And then coming out of that experience being like, you know what? I actually can deal with this. I can move. This thing is not oppressing me. Like I'm taking the power back. Like I'm taking my energy back from this belief or whatever it was that was keeping me so small.
Wow, that's really amazing. I'm curious if you would be interested or willing to share. And I know like each journey I've heard is like so personal. Would you be interested in sharing like just a little bit of like maybe a lesson that ayahuasca took you through, or anything that's like personal to you that you could share, that maybe people that haven't gone through ayahuasca before could maybe get like a even, you know, uh, broader picture of what it could potentially teach them if they were to do it. And again, I know it's I've heard it's so different for everyone. So yeah, I would love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, let's see. Um, Yeah, I'll share like a recent experience because this one is kind of like what is alive in me right now.
Mm,
Um, but a recent journey that I had. Um, so I feel like for me, ayahuasca in particular has been such a profound teacher of forgiveness and
mm,
finding forgiveness for self and for other, and then finding yourself in a totally free, liberated space because of that forgiveness. So, a journey that I had recently, I was really confronting a lot of, um, like I felt like all this mom guilt of like, oh, am I doing enough for my daughter? Am I being a good enough mom? Am I loving enough? And it's like all of this like lack of like, well, I could be doing this more. And I think any mother who's out there can absolutely relate to like the feeling of like, am I enough? Am I good enough? Am I doing this right? Because I think as mothers, like we want nothing more than for giving our child the absolute best and giving all of ourselves and being so present with them, that it's so easy to fall into that space of like, am I enough? Is this it? You know, I don't know. So I was feeling all of that, being plagued and pummeled by guilt and shame and like, well, I could be doing this more or this better. And I stopped myself like in the experience because like the question shifted, like my energy shifted into, why does this always happen? Because this is not the first time that this has happened on like plant medicines where all of a sudden I find myself in this space of questioning, like, am I a good enough mother? Am I good enough this? And so my energy redirected to this, why am I feeling these? Like, why am I always questioning? Because like at my core, I know I'm a really good mother. Like I know like I'm such a loving mother. I offer so much magic and beauty to my daughter, and we have such a beautiful bond. So I was like, why do I keep going here? And what I saw immediately, like where it immediately took me, was my own mother.
mm,
And I felt her. Like it was like she came into the space and I felt what it was like to be her. Like I felt all of her pain, I felt all of her trauma. I felt all of the things that she wasn't able to give me because of her own personal journey through life. Um, and I felt the judgment that I had in my heart towards her for not doing certain things and not keeping me safe in certain ways. And when I felt that judgment, I like heard this voice that was like, you will condemn yourself to the extent that you condemn your own mother. But when
Wow.
you forgive your mother is when you will be free of these thoughts of guilt and shame over your own parenting to your daughter. So
Wow.
it completely like it opened up this beautiful like heart space of like absolute love and absolute forgiveness for my mother, because it made me feel what it was like to be her with all of her unique challenges and what she was facing, when I was a little girl. And I had nothing but absolute compassion and absolute empathy for her. And it was in that space of like forgiving her for what she didn't give me, for like the things that I wanted, where all of a sudden the energy that I was feeling with my own daughter of like, am I enough? Am I this or that? Just like dissipated and disappeared. Cause when I said to myself, like my mom and the way she was perfect and it was enough, that same grace then came over me where I'm like, I am perfect and I am enough.
Wow.
So that was just like a little, yeah,
Yeah.
recent
Thank you
experience.
so much for sharing that. That really resonates. I know that we were talking before I started recording about kind of the mother wound and how I feel like that's really kind of in the air right now because I've been talking with a few clients this week and whether that same particular thing has come up, of places where they haven't reconciled yet the ways that might still be active, that energy, those emotions, the way they feel towards their mother is still active. And it sounds like ayahuasca was a way that really was freeing for you. I know that I work with people and I do a lot of shadow work surrounding the mother wound, but I love your particular experience, of doing it with ayahuasca because yeah, it sounds so freeing. And would you say that with you now having this different perspective towards your mom, would you say like now that like's not going to get, passed potentially to your child? I feel like that so much sometimes can get skipped over. It's like we're so focused on like how we can free ourselves, and then it's like we forget to see like, oh, by us freeing ourselves, then maybe that's not going to get passed down. Like,
Absolutely.
any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that is like the reason why we do the work that we do is like we are changing our ancestral patterns. We're healing generational trauma stuff that's not even ours that we have by nature inherited doesn't have to get passed on to these future generations. And I think that's the beauty of healing, and that's the beauty of like this path of transformation is a lot of the stuff that we inherit, even when it comes to, certain fears that we might have, certain beliefs that we might have. Um, these are all things that like might not even be ours when we get down to the core of it. It's like we might be holding a fear that somebody else back in our lineage was they did not have the capacity to feel it for themselves, so it gets passed on.
Mm.
And it gets passed on and passed on and passed on until someone comes into the generational line that's like, hey, I'm willing to feel that. I'm willing to be with that. And in that experience of being with it, that's where we have this magical thing of like of emotional alchemy and transformation where all of a sudden this thing that was so scary and so limiting, we grab the power and we create our we build ourselves from like this place of magic. So I think it's like really really beautiful to be able to have the privilege of doing that. Our ancestors who weren't able, because of whatever was going on in their lives, they were not able to fully feel their experiences, they were not able to process their trauma, so boom, it just passed until someone pops in and is like, you know what, I will do that. And then as a benefit, my children and then their children and their children are not going to have to deal with that same thing. So I think, yeah, part of the beauty.
That's really amazing. I love that. Yeah, it sounds like you had quite a journey of freedom, and um, I love also the pieces where you talk about how you've really confronted a lot of fear. Um, Because I know like that's been a theme for me in my life as well. Just really confronting fears, just fears of, leaving my family and starting my own new thing. They're also in North Carolina, and just kind of starting over and becoming more comfortable with who I am and in my body and with my own journey and with my own talents and gifts and skills and things like that. It has been definitely quite a journey of facing fear. So I can really relate to you when you talk about that. Uh,
Mhm.
tell me, tell me a little bit about, so you've gone through this journey of healing, of freeing yourself, of going through these intense things, like you were saying. And tell me now, how do you want to now work with other people? Specifically, is it, I think you were saying women that you want to work with? Can you talk a little bit about how, now that you have gone through all that, how will you now share that with other people, or what does that look like for you? I'm curious.
Yes, that's a great question. And I love that like we've simultaneously been on this path and this journey together, because over the last like 10 years, it's been so fun to like call each other up and bounce things off of each other, because I have found that our paths have been very parallel in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
And it's like you're on this other side of, the country, and then I might be like somewhere in South America, but we're like calling each other, and we're diving into like certain fears and certain beliefs. And yeah, so to be able to like walk that journey with you has been such a gift and a blessing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
truly.
But yeah, like as you know, I have been on this journey of confronting a lot of fear, shadow, darkness, sitting with, intense dark night of the souls experiences. And so what I really want to gift the world with like my life is helping women navigate these darker spaces. Because
Mm.
I think what I've noticed is like we are so addicted to the light. We're so addicted to feeling good and like being in that space of like full bloom and light and love and everything, where when life kind of puts us in that space where we're confronting deep shadow and we're confronting darkness and we're sitting in a situation that we did not see coming, we're having to navigate an entirely different terrain in that space. And what I notice is like we want to pull away from that, because the initial instinct is like, I cannot be with this. I need to get back to the light. Like, somebody help me, somebody come rescue me. Like, I got to get out of this so that I can get back there.
Yeah.
But what I want people to understand is like these spaces of darkness are spaces of initiation. They are the spaces in which we meet ourselves. We reclaim our power. We step into these next versions of like who we are and who we're meant to be. And if we would let go of our need to fight it and to resist it, and we would actually learn how to make that space sacred, how to make that our womb, like the womb is dark, the womb is pure darkness. How do we make that space of transformation a holy, sacred ground where we're not feeling like we have to avoid, run, push it down, deny, suppress, disown, but we can actually be with it and expand our capacity to be broken open by life,
Mm.
feel shattered, feel despair, feel darkness, and then in that space, asking ourselves, what is this teaching me? Where is my power that I'm meant to claim in this space? Um, so yeah, a lot of the work I want to do with women really centers around dismantling two things. One is fear, and the other is shame.
Mm.
So those have been like my two biggest energies that I've had to learn to dance with and navigate is my fears and then my shame. And
Mm.
then learning that when I can actually confront it, when I can actually be with it, and I can use my body, my mind, my soul as this like womb for these things to get transformed, unstoppable, unstoppable. So this continual expansion, breaking through the limits, Because I think when we're in a space of darkness, we feel so confined, we start to shrink. We're just like, oh, this is gonna kill me. This is gonna be the thing that takes me out. I got to get out of here. Allowing yourself to get big with it. Get big with those feelings. Get big with the intense energy that you're dealing with. Learn to dance with it. Learn to create. Learn to make that space your home temporarily as you're getting through the muck and you're digging yourself. Sometimes you're on your hands and knees, clawing yourself out of the mud, but you're doing it. So
Wow.
yeah, my biggest thing is teaching women how to actually be in that space, not fight it, not try to get back to the light, but create this womb, this portal where you are actually being so transformed and you're finding the gems and the jewels and the wisdom that is there, because that place is a land of treasures, if you can see it that way.
Yeah, I love that. I really resonate with that, what you're saying with whenever we get in these spaces of uncomfortability or fear or shame, that we can try and want to avoid it. And that so it has been a part of my story in the past. And I've talked about it some on the podcast of how, especially in Christianity, they taught me, oh, if you just like pray harder, or oh, if you just, you know, just be encouraged, and there wasn't these like tools on how to no really feel those deeper emotions like shame and fear and not run for them, because I used to do that. I used to do that a lot. And I have found in my own journey as well, once I started to learn how to sit with them and feel them and even ask them, sometimes ask them the question, like, why are you here? Like, what are
Yeah.
you teach me? It wasn't until I could do that and to be able to tune in the story that is still running in my mind, that's still the pattern, that still is potentially running from childhood even. It's like you don't know it until you can learn to sit with it and feel it. Because if you don't feel it, yeah, you really can't grow and change. I was thinking about that the other day, and how as humans we have this propensity to want to suppress and deaden ourselves, whether it's through food or alcohol or drugs or TV or whatever it is. It's like we have so like learned to just numb ourselves from our feelings, but our feelings are like our biggest teachers. Because what if like I was in this job forever, and I was like running and striving and just trying to pay the bills, and this whole time my body's trying to tell me like, no, like I like our souls, like, let's experience something different. But if you're just like, numbing yourself and going through the motions, and you're not even feeling, not listening and not feeling to what's going on in your body, your mind, your psyche, your emotions, it's like you're just going to keep going, and you're going to miss a particular direction that, yeah, that you're meant to expand into, or you're meant to experience, or you're meant to grow into. So I so resonate with that, like everything you're saying. Just don't be afraid of the perceived darkness. And um so yeah, I really really love that, what you're saying. I'm gonna take a sip of water.
Yeah, and that's something that you've been so good at too, just like in my life, because you've held me through some of my darkest experiences in life. You've really been like a support for me in some of the times where I have been felt absolutely crushed by darkness, absolutely like it's going to obliterate me. And you've been that person that's like there on the other end of the phone, that's like, you're gonna get through this. Like, this is okay. There's a message here. There's a wisdom here. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, like your work with like existential kink to make those experiences of darkness even a little bit more playful, a little bit more, like bringing light into it, bringing joy into it, even when we're in the muck of it. So that's something that I think you're very gifted at as well.
Yeah, I do love to bring that like playfulness in, because I know that it can be really, it can feel really heavy. And I feel like it can be both, right? You don't have to, it doesn't have to be this like marathon of like, this intense like thing like every moment of the day. If we learn to just see it like expand out and like zoom out and see it for what it is these stories that we're so attached to and we're so used to living every day, whether it is like something that we were programmed with or we brought in, like you were saying, from other ancestors, from other family members or whatnot. It's like, how can we take that awareness and that perspective and look at it through a lens of kink, like Carolyn Ellett talks about existential kink. Like she talks about how, you know, God is in everything. God is everything. And what if God wants to experience this experience of being, yeah, kinky or feeling, having fun through these darker emotions, whether it is, I think I
Mhm.
was talking to a girl earlier this week. We were talking about the same thing you were talking about, shame. Like it was one of the things that we were talking about. And I was saying that like in the past, I've like, one of my stories that I've had to work through is being seen. And there's this like kinky side of me that like likes to like hide, and be coy and like,
Yeah.
mysterious, like, oh, I've got all these like things, deep inside of me, but you're not going to see it. And it's like, how can we play with these things? Because when we do, it really starts to break up the intensity a little bit, and it breaks up the attachment to the story, and then you can see it for what it is. We are all just these like stories that we put on, we're all the plays in our own story. And it's like, okay, and maybe I'm tired and I'm done and I'm bored with this story of being coy, and now I want to be more of like the main character energy in my life, and to really showcase who I am and to really show people what I have to offer, and the gifts and the talents and just like the immense healing that I've brought to a lot of people. And so, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I absolutely, I love to do that too. Uh,
Mhm.
Great. I want to talk in a minute more about our group. Is there anything else before I do that you would like to share about your journey or how you foresee yourself working with women? Is there like anything else that you would like to talk to us about today, Kathryn Judy?
Hmm. Um, yeah, I think we kind of hit it. But yeah, I think like to your point, like what you were just talking about with like bringing a more of a lightness and like detachment to our stories and to the things that we're experiencing. Such a game changer for me when I decided to stop taking my life so personally. You know,
Mm,
starting to like give that little bit of spaciousness of like, instead of going into the narrative of like, oh, I always find myself in these like deep dark places, I'm always confronting this really intense energy, I'm always having to deal with like these really dark themes, instead of allowing that to like shape me and like make it feel like it's mine, I've really detached from it a little bit and allowed more of a spaciousness, which has made me not take it all so personally, which is
mm,
why I've like finally got to the point where I am now of like, oh, I can actually like teach women how to move through this and how to nav these spaces because I've been there so many times. And now that I don't see it as so personal, like this is not a personal attack on Kathryn. This is not, a personal thing. It's like there's like so much purpose and wisdom that I have found in creating that spaciousness, because I'm like, okay, these themes and these places that I have been, um, I'm kind of like figuring out the map of how to get through these spaces. So then when I see other women struggling with certain things or being in places that I have been to psychologically or emotionally, I'm like, oh, I actually have like a map for that because I
mm.
have been there and I've been put in these positions where I have to figure it out. I have to find my way through. And I think allowing that spaciousness of like, wow, this isn't just my life. This isn't just for me. Like, yes, it's my life, but it's not so personal. Like, this is a gift And my stories are a gift, and my experiences are a gift, and the things that I go through are a gift, because we're all kind of doing this together. We're all a part of this, like all of humanity. We're all facing these like collective shadows. We're all facing difficult experiences. And so, yeah, being able to bring my life forward as an offering of some kind has been such a beautiful thing that I've been like witnessing within myself, of like, wow, these dark times, these intense experiences, this is now an offering that I have to give. So yeah.
I love that. And I really appreciate that about you, Kathryn, that you've been so committed to your own journey. I think you're one of the only people in my life, friends in my life, that I've seen so committed, as committed as I've been to my own inner journey, inner process, inner evolution, and growth. And so I really commend you. It's been beautiful to watch you go through that and to like just become more and more of who you are.
Likewise.
Talk like I can hear that Scorpio energy coming out, of like
Very
and
true.
I
Yeah,
love
love it.
I want to talk a little bit. So yeah, Kathryn and I really had the idea of wanting to do a group program, and so we're going to talk about that a little bit. It's going to be, I think we were saying 6 weeks. So we want to do a 6 week program if you're interested in that. So I'm going to lead one week, Kathryn's going to lead the next week. So you can really get both of our, yeah, our different ways that we both bring people through kind of transformation, or bring people through, like you were saying, shame and fear and things like that. Um, I was kind of toying around and with the idea of like theming it around the movie Wicked, because there is like there's like the white witch of the like the light, and there's also like the dark witch. There's like the dark and the light, and I think like both are actually important. And anyway, so I would love to do some group hot seat coaching. So if you're interested in signing up for that, I will also, I've wanted to gift people, whoever signs up, my free course, Shadows Made Simple, just as a bonus, because I feel like that really is a beautiful kind of intro to shadow work. So you're not going to be going into this group. Um, so you'll have some idea of like what shadow work is, because not everyone is kind of familiar with that. Um, so I would love to do some hot seat coaching with shadow work. I want to also in my sessions talk some about how can we as people in this year 2025 really start to bring our gifts, talents, voice, whether you want to bring a course to the world, whether you want to bring a podcast out, or if you want to bring, um, more business, or whatever kind of goal that you're looking for this year, if you're wanting to transition out of, your current job or whatnot. Like, I would love to talk to you guys about that. I think I'm very passionate about seeing people really move into what it is that they are happy with and more fulfilled to do in life, versus just doing the 9 to 5 grind where you're getting up and just paying your bills, because that's what you were taught to do, and that's what society wants us to do. So I think like that's a little bit about my piece, and we're going to, yeah, do it in a format where we're meeting like once a week over Zoom. And yeah, and we'll have homework for you guys. And I know there's some talk about the potential of Telegram support throughout the week. So we're really going to make it just, yeah, jam packed of just support and mentorship for you guys, anyone out there that's wanting to work together in a group. I know that especially when it comes around the themes of like shame, it's like you want to be with other people that are going through the same thing, so you're not going through it yourself. And I know that like we're in a time in our world right now, we really just need each other, not to do this journey alone. And I know like in the past I've dealt with hyper independence, and it's the times that I really come and work with other people is when I've had the most just transformation. And so, yeah, I'm really excited. I think it's going to start probably the beginning of February. Kathryn, would you like to talk about what you would like to offer in this group program we're doing?
Sure. Yes. So, my piece of this is going to be really teaching women how to work with this energy of initiation. So, being initiated into this new version of themselves,
Mm.
really breaking out of our own smallness because we are not small, but we have these beliefs and we have these emotions that might tell us or try to keep us in a space of being very small. And so, my piece to this is like, what are the fears that are present? What are the energies that are currently present, and how can we really expand and bust through some of these energies so that we can grow and transform into this into a much bigger container. So expanding ourselves to contain bigger emotion, bigger experiences, a bigger nervous system capacity to move through life. So yeah, I'm going to do probably a lot of like emotional alchemy. So really confronting our fears, not running from things, really confronting um, deep grief, sadness, despair, things like that that are feeling like a weight. And we're going to really like get through that and transform it so that we can expand into this new version of ourselves that life is calling us into.
I love that. I love where you're talking about the piece of like nervous system regulation because I feel like that's so essential that we sometimes don't think about because it's like when we expand into new things, it's like our nervous system has to expand with us and the feeling of being able to hold more pleasure.
Yes.
And so it's like I've known the times in my life when I've experienced even with my relationship that I'm in now, it's like I have to remind myself sometimes like it's safe to be loved in this way and it's like kind of you reminding yourself to like to hold the bigger, more expansive part of you that's wanting to come into your life. And so I love that you touched on that a little bit. Yeah, I love that. And what else? Yeah, I think I'm going to I'll put some more details in the show notes of how people can find us and sign up for that. And yeah, I just really think it's going to be a beautiful journey of starting off with being one way, and by the end of the 6 weeks, we're going to be expanded into a new version of ourselves, the version that is ready to be bigger and bolder in this new year of 2025, and more ready to hold and receive yeah, the new experience or the whatever that outcome is, whether it is like a new relationship, new job, new whatever it is, it's like we'll be ready by the end of these 6 weeks to do that. And so,
Yeah. And I feel like this year, this like year of 2025, there's such a theme of like really going deep into your authenticity and creating life from this very authentic, connected, tapped in space where like all of all of the beliefs that we have about what we should be doing or what we're supposed to be doing can fall away because I feel like this is the year for people to really like own their piece, like own like what is the puzzle piece that you have that nobody else can replicate, nobody else can duplicate it. It's yours. Like you're meant to shine with that. So I really want to like do practices to get people like really in tune with what that is for them and how to like live from a place of your authentic desire.
woo, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that might be all for today, folks. If you liked listening to Kathryn and I speak and what you heard today and you're interested, please reach out. I'm on Instagram at fulfilled.feminine. I, yeah, or at fulfilled.feminine@gmail.com. You can email me there as well. I'm also on Facebook. Kathryn, how can people find you?
Well, I'm not really very findable at the moment. um, Probably like I'll say Facebook for now because that's like what I'm planning on using
Okay.
for content and stuff.
Yeah, and that's a good point. For this group, we're going to be using Facebook a lot. Um, probably for our main format, maybe
Yeah.
Facebook and Zoom together potentially. But okay, I will link your Facebook in the in the show notes. And yeah, I think that's all that we have. Please like and subscribe, leave comments that you love what you hear, and we will talk to you again next time.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me on.
Ooh, yeah.